In this playlist, we are going to discuss everything that you need to know about the listening module of the CELPIP test. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this playlist with anyone who might need it. Let's get started with the very first skill set that is evaluated in case of your CELPIP test, which is the listening test. So I've already made a video about the format of the entire CELPIP test, and this is going to be in detail video of the listening format. So if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, do it right away and also hit the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any videos that I upload in the future. Let's get started. The first and the foremost thing that you have to remember is that the test is divided into 6 parts. So the listening test has 6 parts which take roughly about 47 to 55 minutes to complete. As a test taker, you would be given headsets to listen to the audio being played during the listening test. Now, one thing that you have to remember is that the audio is played only once. You cannot rewind, pause, or replay the audio. So be very attentive and mindful when you are listening to the audio because there's no going back. There will be a short orientation statement that you will read before the audio clip is about to start. This will give you some time to prep up and also get ready for the audio that is about to play. Then comes the next very important thing. Once you leave a page, which means once you have answered a question and then the screen changes to the next question, there is no going back again. You cannot go back and change the answer. So whenever you're marking the answer, you have to be very sure because you cannot proofread or change it later. Then comes the next thing, which is that even if you're not sure about the right answer, you should still be taking the best guess since there are no deductions or no negative marking. So whether you answer the question or you leave it, you are not going to lose any points. So it's always advisable that even if you're unsure of the answer, you'd still take the best guess. Also, the listening test as well as the reading test is multiple choice. So the scoring is done automatically by the computer. There is no human intervention as such. Then there are certain unscored parts or unscored items in your listening as well as the reading test. Now, what does it exactly mean? These are certain questions that do not carry any weightage or do not carry any score because they are included for research purposes only. They will not be scored whatsoever, and there is no way in which you would be able to figure out which ones are scored and which ones are unscored. So you have to treat the entire listening test as if they were all scored questions. Okay, so this is something that a lot of students have doubts about whenever they see unscored items, unscored listening part, unscored reading part. So I hope I've ended your confusion. Unscored listening or reading questions are just for test development purposes, nothing else. It doesn't impact you in any way. Moving on to the difficulty level. Now, the difficulty level gradually increases with each passing part, which means part 1 is the easiest and part 6 is the most difficult one. So, it becomes a bit harder than the one before it. Let's quickly have a look at the listening test parts. What exactly is each part like? How many questions are asked? How much time do you have to answer all of these questions? That's reflected on the table. Let's move on to the listening test and see how each part looks like. So, of course, the first one, as you probably know from the previous video, is part 0 that I like to call. It's the practice task wherein you practice listening and answering a question. There's one question and there's 1 minute to do so. This is of course a practice task, so you will not receive any score for this. Then starts your part 1, which is listening to problem solving. So here you listen to a dialogue and answer 8 questions. The dialogue and questions are divided into 3 sections. There are 8 minutes to complete this task. Then comes your part 2. Listening to a daily life conversation, which is a dialogue between two people, and you have to answer 5 questions in about 5 minutes. Then the third part is listening for information. You listen to a longer dialogue, so the difficulty level increases, right? So the difficulty level increases with each passing part. So you listen to a longer dialogue and you have to answer 6 questions in about 6 minutes. Then you have to listen to a news item and answer 5 questions in 5 minutes. Then you listen to a discussion. So it's a video wherein 3 or more people are talking to each other and you have to answer 8 questions in 6 minutes. Then the last part is listening for viewpoints. Here you have to listen to a report and answer 6 questions in 8 minutes. I'm sorry it wasn't visible on the screen. I hope you can now see the entire thing. You can also take a screenshot of this. I am going to keep it like this for a minute. Yeah, please take a screenshot and then we'll move ahead. Let's dwell deeper into each part now. So part 1 is listening to problem solving, wherein you hear a dialogue between two people. One speaker has a problem, of course, and the other speaker does not know the first one. Okay, so the one providing the solution is not a friend or is not known to the first person. They're strangers, does not know this person, and works for an organization that serves the public and helps find a solution. So one person is throwing the problems, the other one is trying to resolve it. The dialogue is divided into 3 short clips with 2 or 3 questions after each clip. So you hear a clip and then you have 2 or 3 questions. Then you hear another clip, 2 or 3 questions. Then you hear the third clip and then there are 2-3 questions that you have to answer. Each of the 3 clips is about 60 to 90 seconds long and test takers have exactly 30 seconds. You have exactly 30 seconds to answer each question. So you get about half a minute to do so. You hear the questions through the headset and look at the answer choices on the screen. So this is how your screen would look like. This is actually a screenshot from your actual test. So it says listening part 1, listening to problem solving. There's this option of next. I would recommend you never use it. The screen would automatically move on to the next page once the time is out. Okay, so the audio is playing here. The blue bar here shows the length or the duration of the audio that is played. Once it's completed, this blue bar reaches the end point. Okay, so this is about the first one. There's a problem, there's a solution, and that's the conversation about. Then you have to listen to a daily life conversation. Let's quickly understand what it looks like. So you hear a dialogue between 2 people once and then answer. So here you have, in the first one there were 3 short clips. However, in case of listening to a daily life conversation, it is a dialogue between 2 people that you hear once and then you answer a set of 5 questions. So 5 questions are answered at once. The dialogue is typically about day-to-day activities such as shopping, cooking, asking directions, and it is about 1.5 to 2 minutes long. You get 30 seconds again. Here also you got 30 seconds. In part 2 as well, you're getting 30 seconds to answer each of the question. The screen for the first part of the listening to a daily life conversation is shown here. It's again a screenshot of the very first part, and I've explained how the bar moves from here till the very end as the entire audio clip plays, and the time is about 1.5 to 2 minutes long. Again, you cannot rewind, you cannot replay, you cannot pause this. You have to be attentive and you have to be mindful of what you're listening to. Moving on to the part 3, wherein you're listening for information. This dialogue is also between 2 people, but the content of the conversation may be a little more specialized because you're listening for information. Typically, one person is an expert on the topic, telling the other speaker something about that topic. The conversation lasts about 2 to 2.5 minutes and the test taker again has 30 seconds to answer each of the 6 questions that follow. As in part 1 and 2, the questions are spoken, but the answer choices are written, and the test takers, if desired, move to the next question earlier. However, I recommend never moving to the next one early because there's no going back. So let the page time out and automatically move to the next one. So this is how the screen would look like. You listen to the question, you're listening to the question. So the audio plays for the question, and then you have these MCQs on the right hand side, and you pick the one that is the answer. This shows the time remaining, so there are 30 seconds for each question. If you're done with the answer, you can opt for next, but I'd recommend not doing it. Move on to the next one as the page times out. Okay, so it shows the time remaining. This is where the audio plays. This is your question on the right hand side and your answer. Part 4 is listening to a news item, wherein you're listening to a news report that usually focus on a community news story. Typically, it's designed to tell story in a simple way. You are challenged to understand the gist of the story. You have to understand what it is trying to convey and hear the important details. So here the important details would usually look like the 5 W's and 1 H. So anybody who knows, I'd request that you comment it down below. What are the 5 W's and 1 H that you should be mindful of while listening to the news story? And the story is 1.5 minutes long. The screenshot looks like this. So you're listening to a news item. Here it shows the time remaining on the right top corner. Again, you have the next option, which I advise you not using because the page will eventually time out. And then there are drop down menu options. There are 4 options again, and you have to pick the one that suits best. So even if it's a drop down menu, it is still MCQ. Then we move on to part 5. Part 5 is basically listening to a discussion, and it is in a video format, as you can see on your screens. So it is in video format. There are 3 people discussing a problem, but they cannot agree on how to solve it. These people may be co-workers or community volunteers, which means they know each other. You see this 2-minute video clip just once. Again, there's no going back. You cannot replay, rewind, or pause the video. You have only one chance to watch it, and you have to watch it in one go. And then you have 4 minutes to respond to 8 questions. The test taker can go back and forth between questions. So you can go back and forth between questions. However, you cannot replay the video. So this is how the video looks like, and when you go to the next one here, it shows the questions. Then comes listening for viewpoints. And before I discuss this, let me tell you, I'm just showing you the format right now. I'll be solving each and every type of question, wherein I'll get into further detail of how the questions would look like, how the options would look like, and how you have to navigate from one page to the other. So stick around, and everything will be explained in detail. The last part of the listening test presents a longer report, 3 minutes long, and is followed by 6 questions. The content of this report is more challenging. As I told you earlier, part 6 is the most difficult one. And at least 2 different perspectives about controversial topics will be heard. You have to have a high level of vocabulary, and ideas may be complex, making it difficult to fully understand the audio, which means you have to practice a little harder when it comes to the part 6. You have to recognize complex ideas that have been paraphrased, so you need to know what paraphrasing looks like, and then you may need to infer information, make deductions based on what you just heard. You have 4 minutes 20 seconds to answer 6 questions. So in case of viewpoints, you will have certain positive, negative, as well as neutral viewpoints when you hear the audio, and you have to differentiate between them and the people who are supporting, are against, or are giving a balanced approach, so that you're able to answer the questions properly. And don't worry about it, I'll be discussing each and every question type in detail. I'll be solving the questions with you, and that way it'll be easier for you to understand, strategize, and then also implement that step by step approach when you're taking your own tests. That's about it in today's video. I'll go back to the summary box. So let me shrink myself a little so that the ones who missed out on this can have a look at it, take a screenshot so that you know what you are getting into when you're taking the CELPIP listening test. It was wonderful explaining all of these topics to you. I hope to see you guys again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to someone who might need it. Bye bye. Have a good day.